talking about development, for a while now, the alternative payment system to SWIFT, talking about the BRICS Pay, which was developed by some countries as an alternative to the US dollar as a form of payment, has been making the rounds on news. And some persons have been, going back and forth with it. School of thoughts with different opinions. Is this here to stay? Can the BRICS payment, developed, of course, by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, be an alternative form of payment system to the US dollar, which has held sway, which has made the United States of America world power? And you hear, a lot of people say no, the US dollar. I mean, I was sitting at a place, I think it was a pub, and people were arguing seriously about this. At some point in this program, we've also talked about the Nigerian federal government trying to see if they could, become a part of the BRICS payment system as an alternative, to what we operate in now. I don't know what you make out of it, but then, of course, we do have, a seasoned development expert and someone who is very well, versed with this conversation to contribute on the show. But then first, your thoughts, though.
Okay, my thought is it's something that has been in the pipeline for long.
Yeah.
The BRICS have been trying one way or the other to replace the dollar. It seems to be a de-dollarization move. So how that will pan out at the end of the day, we'll wait to see. But with the BRICS Pay, it seemed like they're getting somewhere close to having that happen. But
Yeah.
for it being an alternative to the dollar, it's going to take a long long and hard work for that to happen, because the dollar is payment for a lot of things, apart from it being the currency for which you pay for commodities at the international global markets. It's still like the standard of measurement for currencies across the globe. So somebody tells you this thing costs like 5,000 naira in Nigerian currency. So for you to understand it, tell you, okay, maybe like $5 or $2, so you understand. So it's going to take a lot to happen, but what it will do is provide some form of alternative, but not the alternative. So it's going to be like, it's an option, but the dollar is still going to hold sway until a lot of countries accept it and it becomes payment for many transactions. So basically, it's about volume of transaction. If they can achieve that, then I think it would have been a dream come true for the BRICS.
Well, we'll open our eyes and dream these dreams open. I wonder what will happen to people who trade in Forex or who do Forex trading.
It may just bring a new dynamics to the market and make it maybe more interesting.
Dynamics. Anyway, let's have the perspective of Ambassador Wallace Williams, who is the chairman, African International Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a development expert and a regular on the program. Good morning to you, Ambassador Wallace.
Good morning to you, and good morning to our dear sister there, and your new set there, which looks absolutely wonderful. I hope to come there when I'm back to Lagos and sit with you on that new set. The perspective.
Right. Thank you very much. We'll just start off the conversation. Of course, the system in place, the Western system in place, the SWIFT payment system has, held sway for a couple of years now. And there's been this back and forth about the BRICS payment system. At this point, I'd want to, pick your herd first and foremost. With some other world powers rearing up, trying to see if they can come up with the BRICS Pay. Of course, there's a Russia, there's a China, and the political undertone as to world domination. First and foremost, let's lay the basics. Does BRICS payment system have what it takes to completely, take over what we have already on ground with the SWIFT payment system?
It's about an alternative. You all just made the point, which was a very key point, about volume of trade. But when you look at volume of trade, look at the heavyweights behind an alternative system. Brazil, India, China, Russia, South Africa, and 159 countries. I think we need to do a calculation on what volume of trade that represents. And I think when you do your calculation and research, you will see that it is over 60% of world trade and to the normal SWIFT and dollar payment. And what will happen now, which is what I had referred to before, you will now have an alternative. No one is saying that it's going to take over. You have an alternative to trade in a new payment system, in a new currency that has evolved, that makes trading between countries much easier for them and their exchange rates because their currencies are weak, extremely weak, and they have been weaponized by the dollar and feel that this is against their throat. They have no other alternative, and they are going to keep struggling. Their economies are going to be bashed about, and they are going to feel that, what sense does it make? Everything they make and they try to trade with, they are at a disadvantage. What this gives now is a level playing field, and that is Mr. Dollar, Mr. Swift, you are no longer going to be the dominant factor in exchange and trade in the world. We now, as a group of countries with enough trade volume between ourselves, will have an alternative payment system and an alternative currency. Yes, we will trade with you on your currency, but it's no longer that your currency is dominant. What will happen is that we have a trading system, we have a trading platform, we have an alternative currency, and we have an alternative payment system among ourselves. And if we don't have to rely totally again on your payment system to our disadvantage, we are going to be in a situation where it's a win-win for us, and you will have to compromise to work with us if you want to trade with us. So I think the trade matter, the volume of trade, and the payment system alternative is now going to create a basket of trade currencies now for the world to trade in. And that is more important than having a currency that dominates, totally dominates, and decides, what the value of your currency is, the volume of trade you can have, because don't forget, many people, if they cannot get the dollar, cannot trade. And therefore, they are at a disadvantage. So everybody should welcome this. And just to mention the fact that they might be a long way off, they're not. They're weeks away. They're weeks away. We are talking about October. We are actually weeks away before that payment system comes into force.
All right. The US dollar actually has its significance stemming from it being a reserve currency. So several countries have their reserve in the US dollar. Even if we talk about volume of trade, and that can be achieved by the BRIC nations, being that they are more like the manufacturing hub and the commercial countries of the world. But when we talk about reserve currency, would that still mean that some countries who were not part of the BRICS at this point, but may have indicated interest to be part of the BRICS, would be able to have that as an alternative for their reserve?
Well, you have to quickly follow what is happening. A lot of them have started to move away from having the dollar as their reserve currency. And, take, for instance, Saudi Arabia. They've already made the indication. China, most of those who are in BRICS are already looking seriously at moving away from having the US dollar as their reserve currency. And it will have to happen because to ensure that their BRIC system moves away from the dollar, they will have to also look at having their reserve currency in the system that they are supporting. I mean, it does make sense. because their reserve currency is also going to be the mainstay, the blood of their currency reserves. And why would you want to maintain your currency reserves in the dollar if what you're using for ensuring that you can move away from a payment system that is disadvantaged to you? Why would you also keep your reserve currency in dollar unless some people want to hedge, and they hedge by having a basket of currencies, including the dollar, as part of their hedging. And if part of the hedging is to keep some, I would not see them keeping all into the reserve banks of the West, whilst they are moving swiftly away, to use a terminology, swiftly away from the SWIFT system. So I do not see that as being the be all and end all of the system of reserve currency for these countries. No, China and all the other major big players have said that they're moving their reserve currencies, and they have the biggest reserve currencies vested in the dollar. And if they're moving out, you can bet that the others who have now got the confidence to be in BRICS will also do the same. They will follow suit.
So, Wallace, I'd like to, find out what you think about the BRICS payment system and the SWIFT. If you place them side by side, how do they compare? There's been talks about a currency for the BRICS payments in the works, and there's been talks about, blockchain, going that direction of blockchain and all. But then, if you had to compare them, how would you put them side by side?
Well, we haven't seen the launch as yet, but you can bet that they will be going towards adoption of a lot of digital technology. And don't forget, the US themselves are already moving because they fear what is going to happen with BRICS. They're moving towards a digital dollar. I don't know if you're aware of that they have already talked with the Federal Reserve Bank, and the US have talked about having a digital dollar. So even they have started to look at embracing the technology of blockchain and digital exchange of currency, goods, and services. So if you are to guess or second guess what surprise element the BRICS will have, I would say it's technology. I would say is digital applications, and certainly among them would be blockchain for transactions, because now the world has moved away from paper fiat in most transactions, from mobile money to digital transfers. You are now having the adoption of technology. And of course, the dollar are already moving towards a digital dollar. So they themselves have seen the light and will move towards the adoption of technology for their currency. And if the comparison will have to be, and you have to bet on it, you can bet that the BRICS currency would have adopted a lot of digital technology, a lot of security with regards to digital technology and digital payment systems. And I would dare say they would probably be an edge ahead of the dollar in comparison. So if I had to make a bet, I would say that the BRICS would have welcomed and looked at all the payment systems that are evolving in the world, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Europe, whether it's anywhere in the world that everyone is adopting digital technology as a means of trade and payment. I would say that they would have looked at that very carefully. Their scientists, their designers, their IT people would have looked at that. Their financial and fintech teams would have looked at all that and perhaps absorbed all of that, and also initiate and evolve new cutting edge technology. So if I was to bet on comparison, I would say that they will be a step ahead of the dollar. That's my bet.
All right. Earlier when Temple and I were talking, he mentioned the forex market. So this is where the currencies of the world are traded. What do you think would be the role, or how key is the forex market to the acceptance and adoption of the BRICS Pay? What dynamics do you think it's going to bring to the forex market? I just heard now that Ambassador Wallace is having some network glitch from his end. We hope that he rejoins us shortly. Before that time, TC, we're talking about the forex market and how the BRICS Pay might change things there, or how it might affect the forex markets. Currently, the dollar is the widely traded, the most common currency traded in the forex market now, with all of the digital advantage that the BRICS Pay seem to be building to have. How do you think it's going to affect its acceptance? What role will the forex market play in the acceptance of the BRICS Pay beyond just countries who are members of BRICS?
Well, I feel that a lot of people opt for the U.S. dollar because of its stability and what the foreign reserve has done to ensure that it continues to manage, so you don't have some of those inflations rise and fall experience with other currencies. Also, despite the fact that the pound sterling is way higher, in comparison to the dollar and the euros as well. But then the exit of Britain from, Brexit hasn't really helped the pound. Yeah. And the pounds as an alternative source or alternative form of payment or funding. The US have been able to consolidate its market hold and ensure that the dollar is the go-to, right? Countries all over the world have also used the dollar as for, so it's more like he was talking about volume of trade. And so you have how many countries in the world now, and then probably 80% of all those countries use the US dollar, not the pounds, not the euros, not the yen, but the dollar. And so that's the struggle. And the US has fortified this by having bilateral relations, has increased trade relations, economic ties, strengthened economic ties with all of these countries, providing aid, providing support. And these aids and support and even missions are done in dollars. And then you also have a penetration of remote jobs now into the African continent. You have US employers seeking more African employees, and then you're being paid in dollars. And so payment systems are now fine-tuned for you to receive dollar pay. And then you're earning this foreign currency. You now get to have like a conversion to the Naira. And I mean, so it's just a whole lot that's been perfected by the United States to ensure that they continue to hold sway and dominate. So if you pick all of these and you put it into Forex, I mean, and anybody who does forex trade would want to continue to do dollar, because you want to also buy a car and you had dollar equivalent. It's easier for you to pay. And so you're in Nigeria, you have a dollar account.
But don't you think that if the BRICS Pay comes on the forex market, it gives them some form of exposure to people who ordinarily would not maybe have need to make transactions using the BRICS Pay, and so they're quite used to it, they're exposed to it, and so little transactions are being done. It also gives them some room to use the currency and see where there are imperfections, where it has challenges, as opposed to the US dollar that has universality, so you can trade from anywhere with the US dollar. So that seems to be like some place to experiment. And also, and you know that in the forex market, you have lots of young people who are quite adventurous. When you see a new currency that provides them more value, then maybe it's even cheaper, the transaction, and then they can also do business, is also effective, they may just be buying into it.
Okay, so I'm going to come at it from this angle, and that's the fact that you mentioned young people. So, how many persons actually trade in Bitcoin and blockchain right now? How many persons are abreast with the workings of the blockchain industry? Not the working set, the terminology, the concept, the ideology, before you now talk about the workings.
So I don't think that the BRICS Pay will be as complex as cryptocurrency.
Well, from what I've read and what I've researched, I mean, it's going to go towards that direction. It's not going to be like a currency note.
Yes, but
right?
maybe not as complex as that.
Well, in as much as it might not be that complex in your own words, because you don't know what it's going to be just yet. It's definitely not going to be a form of exchange that you can appreciate with the eye. So it's something that has to be technologically driven. It's going to be soft, in quote, right? How many persons, especially in the African continent, which is the main focus of most of these world powers, the trade relations, the economic relations are with African continents or countries in the African continent. The last time Ambassador Wallace was on the program, while I was on the show, he mentioned something. He said, why will one country have a relation, like an arrangement with the whole continent? One country, I think it was Indonesia or something, that
Yes,
signed that
Indonesia
agreement.
and Africa.
So you can imagine Indonesia, Africa, not Indonesia to Nigeria, not Indonesia to Ghana, and then what are you giving back? I don't know if you get
I get what you're saying.
So
but
it's
if you
the
look
people
at
in Africa who are going to be the in broadcasting, we say the target audience. These are going to be the target market. These are the persons who are going to make that arrangement come alive.
Okay, if you talk about people in Africa, I would say that if they could trade crypto, in spite of how much the central bank has not really been flowing along that line, there have been restrictions. If they could trade crypto, I don't think that if the BRICS Pay was to launch and it's in the forex market, that traders in Africa would have issues with that. So I think it's going to be a learning curve, but eventually it's something that they would be able to handle. But what I do see happening here is that for Africans who trade with China, who trade with Russia, because Russia seems to be getting lots of welcome in Africa. So that might just be a very good way of them transacting. And if you get onto the forex market, maybe the excitement of what's this BRICS Pay? What does it do? How can we transact with it? Are there benefits? Are there advantages? Might just make people want to explore and see how it goes in my thinking. But hey, we need to wait for the BRICS Pay to launch in the forex market and see if it would be able to cause any disruption or it's going to be a failed project. But I think that with all of that we put into it and how much of success the dollar has had, which they've studied, we might just be looking at something new that will change things. Before the interruption with your network connection, the question I asked is the forex market. Would the BRICS Pay be a disruption in the forex market? How significant is the forex market to the acceptance of the BRICS Pay?
Right. As I said, and sorry for the technical hitch we had, they will have no choice because you have a powerful trading volume of countries. And I like the fact that you made the point about the youth and Africa. The youth, on the African continent is 75% of the continent, and they are moving towards fintech and digital education and digital involvement in already trade, like Kenya is with M-Pesa and others. I was yesterday at the National Identity Management Day, and already AFRIGO is making leaps and bounds in that direction as well. So evolving on the continent is quite a lot of fintech digitally going in the direction of trade. And then the point that you made, which is quite good, but you missed it a little bit, is that the continent of Africa, yes, is the new bride. And who are there? China, Russia, Brazil has volume trade, India. And these are people who will pioneer the BRICS. And having the continent as a continent where 26 out of the countries on the continent have very weak currencies, what is going to happen? They will want to adopt something new and alternative that will ease their trading exchange on the world market. And therefore, it's a very clever move from the point of view of even the African continent, who will be willing to not be weaponized against by the dollar. So the forex market, they will have no choice but to accept the new alternative currency among their basket of currencies. And I think we are looking at an evolution, a revolution that is going to shake the world quite soon, more than people think. I mean, quietly, this is moving, like a quiet storm. And I think it's going to break in a very, very big way. And I am saying to my friends and those who have volumes of dollar, start hedging, because you are going to get a hit on the dollar when the BRICS comes into play. That is my vision and foresight on what's going to happen.
Okay, so let's take this conversation to the continent of Africa, because we've talked about it, and yes, at some point there were talks about a regional currency for ECOWAS and all. I mean, would there have been an alternative for Africa? Yes, Africa is the new bride. All the world powers, are courting, wanting to, get Africa to, do business and to tie with them. But then, how about if we, as Africa, have our own regional currency? Would that be better for us?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And there is work going on it at the moment as we speak. There is work going on regional currency, or rather continental currency. But already, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso has taken a leap, quantum leap, in that they have already developed and moved away from the CFA, the French currency, in Africa, because it's not a currency in Europe, but it's a currency that they've used as also a weapon in Africa. And they've moved away from that and are adopting their own currency. So it's happening. The African continent has recognized that we need to move and have our own standard currency. And we are working on SOUQ, Standard United Digital African Currency Contract, at the moment. And we will keep you informed where that is concerned, because as the African Chamber, we have recognized that the continent need to evolve their own platforms, their own payment system, and their own standard currency. It's an essential.
Now, for even the currencies that have been developed, the advantage to any country is the balance of trade. One of the reasons why the African countries in Africa have had weak currencies is the deficit in balance of trade. It's more like there's a higher demand for the dollar every time that there is a trade between African countries and countries outside of Africa. How can this be managed? With the introduction of the BRICS Pay, change anything about this?
Yes, it will, because already some countries are being allowed to trade in their currency on a unilateral basis with some of the other countries. India has already started. China has already started. And I must tell you that already Nigeria has a unilateral arrangement with China. Do you know that you can go to China and use your naira unilaterally to pay for goods and services? Now, that is already happening and taking place, because the advantage that the BRICS countries want is to be able to give African countries the ability to trade with what they have in exchange for what they will get. And it's a win-win in that respect. Traders leave Nigeria, go to Guangzhou and they buy and pay for goods and services in naira. Now, that is just to tell you that the revolution has already started quietly. And so a lot of these BRICS countries would be giving unilateral relationships with the African countries whose currencies they know are very weak, but give them the ability to breathe and to trade. And that's an advantage for us until we have developed our own currency, our own platform, our own exchange.
All right, so still talking about the balance of trade. So report shows that when it comes to the US and China, part of the reason they've always had a balanced trade is due to domestic macro forces. What can Africa learn from them?
ACFTA, the African Free Trade Area, we have to now start trading among ourselves that China has done, because what China did is use the advantage of numbers. They have a captive market, and therefore, that, as you said, has given them a balance of trade with the United States. Africa now has to adopt the same policy and use the African continental free trade as their means of balancing up. Start trading within, buy local, trade local, and use the advantage that the African free trade area will give the continent. Look inwards before looking outwards, because they were forced to look outwards because of the dollar and the trade with the rest of the world. But we have a captive market too. The African continent, we are 1.3 billion. So let's have the same, and let's do the very same. Use the same model. There's nothing to say, well, your surplus cannot be traded outside to the rest of the world. But first, use the advantage of captive market, and then the surplus you trade outside. So if 70% of your manufactured goods and your products can be traded within the market, and the rest you depend on, you've reduced your risk by trading internally, and just not relying totally on trading with the rest of the world where you are at a disadvantage.
So considering these macroeconomic forces, what's the trade outlook in the long term for China and the US?
Well, China will maintain their position because they have already committed themselves to one, having a new payment system. Two, they know they have the strength of numbers of their own market, captive market. Three, they know that they have joined with other major markets and traders like Russia, India, Brazil, and they're sitting pretty. They're quite happy that they've got support now. That is what it is. In other words, whereas before America could have singly targeted them and they had no support, this idea of BRICS have given them, it's like a pack of wolves now. They are moving together and they are supporting each other. So therefore, they are not singled out again strategically by the US to be hit as a lone wolf. They are now with a pack, and the pack is BRICS, and therefore they have support. So when it comes now to the macroeconomic forces, they have created an extra macroeconomic force among themselves. And that is the advantage now of BRICS having evolved into a major force to be reckoned with. And I dare say it will be a major force.
That has given China trade surplus is the export-oriented economic model it has. And then when you look at the US, it has consumer spending. In spite of how much these two countries seem to have trade war, they're still like the tongue and the feet. They still live together and somehow depend on each other. So with China being a significant player in the BRICS and with the development of the BRICS Pay, will it in any way affect this trade between them?
No, I think what will happen is that they will have mutual respect. And what I'm saying again is that this move was clever by China to have pioneered together with the others this trading advantage space. In other words, we have to trade. We must trade because we are large exporters and we are major producers and manufacturers. And now it's just a chess game, you know. And they will be playing that chess game very, very carefully among themselves. And it will be a question of who blinks first. Um, I dare say that America will now have to stay on its side of the fence and watch how China is maneuvering with BRICS.
Just talking about the relationship, no love lost between China and United States. In his words, I dare say, of course, they have to depend on each other. I mean, no man is an island.
At all.
In as much as we are on the island,
Oh
we
yeah.
cannot survive without those on the other side, on the mainland. I mean, this is just me being putting in pawn into perspective. But
That's
then
right.
there are some there's a perspective to it, and that's the fact that there are reports that China is also transiting into a consumer-driven economy. I would have wanted to find out what Ambassador Wallace makes out of it. For a while now, they've consumed only what they produce. Trying to limit it, but then
Encourage domestic consumption.
exactly. So, how would that impact on world trade, and how can Nigeria, Africa, take a leap or to borrow a leaf from that scenario? Because you say down here we have enormous resources, and above all, I think one of the things that's helped China is the human resource, the fact that they're able to put hands to work. Yes, they have the numbers, and we also do have that here, but we're unable to create an enabling environment for these hands to get the work done.
Yeah, another thing that has helped China, apart from the numbers, they moved from being dependent on manpower to machine power to develop that. So it gives them more advantage. And that's why they are able to produce and produce more, not just to satisfy their population, but to be major exporters of different products. For domestic consumption, the reason that thrives in China is because they're producing a lot of items, a lot of products that they consume.
Yeah.
If you come down to Nigeria, the reverse is the case. Now, when you talk about technology, you would think the US, you would think China. Do you think Nigeria when you talk about technology? Even the technology that Nigeria has, it's more like playing catch up or work on the back of things that have already been created. Just use tools, use applications that have already been created to maybe make other things or carry out some services. And if Nigeria is to make headway, or Africa is to make headway with the resources that the continent and the country has, it means that Africa needs to move away from being dependent on the primary nature of those resources and create value chain that will, at the end of the day, result in value addition, because that's where more of the money is. That's where the wealth will come from. But if we're dependent on the natural resources and all we do is to extract them and export, sell them cheaply, and then import them again because we need the product that's been created out of them, it means that it's going to be the same story at the end of the day. But good news for you, Ambassador Wallace is back, and so it can attend to some of those issues. Nice to know you're back with us, Ambassador Wallace. You're a fighter, so the internet cannot stop you from being fully part of the show today.
And you're making a very significant point there. I have spoken in the past about transfer of technology, and we need to have a continental policy of local content. Bringing people into our space, we need to, yes, we are not always there yet with the innovation, but let's have transfer of skills. Let's have factories come in and transfer skills, knowledge base to help us with our quantum leap. We do have the scientists. We do have the innovators. What we need to do is to empower them. And that is what Nigeria needs to do as the leading country on the continent, and the others need to follow that model. We need to have a situation where the transfer of knowledge, the impediment that has kept us back as a continent is removed. And that has to do with being able to develop, as you said, like China did. They moved away from just being total consumers and dependent on consumption to being a total country of manufacturing. And their policy was every home should become a manufacturing room base and a manufacturing outlet. So everybody is doing some form of manufacturing or service. And that's why most of the American companies and all other European companies moved to China to take advantage of that. But what they were doing cleverly is making you come to their country, take that quantum leap by transferring your knowledge there, because you had to use locals, train them to get the advantage of the low cost of labor. And it was a very clever trick. Once they'd done that, they started reverse engineering. They started moving and developing what they learned from those who came to their continent to manufacture in their continent. So we need to do the very same thing. We need to have people come, bring their knowledge base, bring their skills, and trade it among our people, give it to them so that they can develop. But most people want to come, exploit, and not give us part of the value chain. Exploit the resources, take it out, and then they take advantage of the value chain. No, we want to be able to have control of the value chain in the continent, on the continent, so that we can also be among the Chinas of this world, the Russias of this world, the United States of this world, and it can be done. It takes leadership, and it takes policy and strategy.
Well, we'll be wrapping things up. I'd like to thank you so much, Ambassador Wallace, for finding time to join us on the program today, despite all of the internet brouhaha that we've experienced. I dare say, in your words, you're a fighter.
We
and
we need to get our own backbone.
you know,
We need to get our
contribute.
own technology backbone. So dependent also on others is disruptive. And who knows if they're not disrupting us.
Thank you so much. We appreciate and look forward to speaking with you some other time.
Thank you.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.